Greetings, fellow humans. Katrina here. Quick disclaimer, I'm a professional, not your professional. So nothing we're about to talk about today should be taken as medical, legal, or otherwise advice. This podcast is good for education and amusement. That is it. That's a disclaimer. So without any further ado, this is Bryan. Bryan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah. My name is Bryan Doane. I'm a 41-year-old father of two. I am from Pennsylvania, and that book that Miss Dragon there is holding is my first book that I've ever written, first debut novel. I feel weird calling it a novel, but I
It
guess
is a great novel, and some people can't see us right now. So for those of us who can't see us, it's called The Divided States, Line in the Sand by Bryan Doane. Am I saying your last name right?
yes, Doane rhymes with bone.
And I like on the back, it says, when a nation breaks, every belief becomes a battlefield. So my podcast is, I don't know what we're going to talk about. And today I thought, I don't know a lot about this book. So I thought maybe I could ask you a couple questions. And without further ado, I'll do that. So can you give a little bit of background before we get into it? Like a little bit of your background, I guess.
Sure.
You said you're a father.
So, as far as writing the book and my background, which very much my background is what led up to it, is I grew up in Pennsylvania and my life has taken me to many different places. Um, I've always been fascinated with other cultures. I've been fascinated with religion and politics, never wanting to engage too deeply personally in politics, but understanding broadly how things work and the undercurrents behind.
Like you comprehend
Uh,
the political theater.
yes, I want to understand it because I feel like just like in daily life, maybe it's due to I have ADD or was back then diagnosed with ADD, today ADHD or whatever the acronym is. And I feel that my neurodivergency offers me the ability to see certain things differently because in everyday interactions, I'm able to feel like, the fake things, like when regular people are talking about the weather, but I'm thinking about much more existential ideas and topics in my brain.
Nice.
I'm the kind of person that when someone asks how you're doing, I'll probably tell you truthfully. And then the person stands there with an awkward look on their face.
And we
Um,
share something in common. We're both veterans. And my next question, I was wondering a little bit about how your military influence, or your military experience, rather, because I know my experience in the military absolutely influences what I do in the rest of the world or with the rest of my life. And so I'm wondering, how did your personal military experience influence your writing of The Divided States?
yes. So the first thing that I'll mention is that being in the military has allowed me, I've had to travel to a lot of places and um, it gave me a different perspective. And the moment I feel that moving outside of the United States and living outside of the United States for an extended period of time has ultimately led me to a greater appreciation of the United States. And
I feel
um,
that. I haven't lived abroad, but I've traveled abroad, and I feel that.
I feel like living in the United States, people kind of just accept the way things are and the way things work here is the way the world is. And that's just such a limited viewpoint. And they don't realize how fragile this way of life really is. And um, so that's kind of like part of what led to the book. I took, concepts that I had seen in the real world. I'll first off by saying that although I consider myself a creative person, I've always been into things like music. I've been into things like theater. I sing, play guitar, anything like arts and
I think the first
humanity
time I
related.
met you, you were playing a guitar. You had a guitar in your hand, and that's how we connected. I was like, "Oh, you play the guitar. That's so cool."
Yeah, so I'm always anything, like I always feel like I need some sort of outlet for expression of sorts, whether it's through songwriting or whatever. I was always like okay at writing. I never really was that bad in English. I really wish that I had paid attention more in English class, specifically with like grammar and punctuation and things like that. So while I am not like a classically trained writer, um, I've always had certain ideas floating around in my head. The idea for this book has been cooking for a long time.
Nice.
It started with a series of questions of like, if the United States was going through, what, a country in the Middle East was going through in terms of terrorism or extremism, how would they react? How would society broadly react? And all of the interplay between them.
And I like
Um,
how it's set in the future. What year is it set in again? 20,
2050.
2050, and it's currently 2025. So that's 25 years in the future.
Yes, so I did that on purpose. And the reason I did it on purpose is because the book for me serves I want it to feel unsettling. I want the reader to feel like this isn't too far ahead. I want it to feel familiar. I want the conflicts to feel familiar. I want the book to read as if this is what happens if the current extremism goes unchecked
Like
in
it
current
could.
American society. Like this could very well happen. That's the idea behind that. Um,
And how would you say like AI assisted you in like the development of the book or in your professional development?
so because I'm not a professional writer, and I will state that, and like there's a big obvious debate right now in terms of the use of AI. Even Amazon, when you upload to publish, there's like a set of questions, like three of them. um, how like to what extent did you use AI? And then you have to give more details. Did you write most of it, use a little bit, change a lot of it, change none of it? Did you use it for text, for pictures and things of that nature? And then there's some people, there's a little bit of controversy around it. Now, whereas I did not, write the book by pressing a button and asking it to write a story. Um,
So it was more of a
I've
tool.
I used it as a tool, exactly. Similar to how, as a photographer, I would use Photoshop as a tool,
Oh, that's a good
or
example.
Lightroom as a tool. Um, Nearly every professional photo that you see in a magazine, and you're like, man, if only I had a good camera. But well, the problem is that good camera is only a third of the picture. A third of the picture, well, maybe even more parts to that. But most of it is the lighting, the camera, and then the editing that comes afterward. Almost every picture in a magazine has retouching, smooth skin, whitened teeth, brightened eyes, things of that nature. They are not the in camera picture that goes straight to their memory card.
I
So,
wish more people knew that.
yeah, to the point where that's why, over the course, that's a rabbit hole to go down.
Right. That's a topic for another time.
But I feel like that, for example, has largely led to, the way things are with women's self-image today. I think it's largely responsible because it gives them unattainable goals that they see in magazines when people have impossibly small waists and long
Right.
legs.
Back to that
Um,
dystopian potential reality, right? Because it could potentially become a reality. What would you like readers to know about your plot line?
I mean, I feel like the best way to talk about the plot line, I would read the back of the book, um, and the plot line really, or how I would even explain the book
Yeah, maybe like
to
in a million
somebody
words.
that's never heard of it. So the idea is that the current political climate of today, where elections are being called into question, um, people become, they form sides. People are, the propaganda is increasing.
And the mistrust
violence,
of the government has increased since MK Ultra in the 70s, I would say. Like it's just
mistrust of the
progressively.
government, mistrust of science, mistrust of even, some could argue today, military command. There's currently, right now, in today's political discourse, right now in the news and the headlines, there's that whole furor right now over that video that a bunch of former military people
Right, because they said
posted where
something that's
they're
already
like,
written down.
you're allowed to refuse illegal orders.
You're supposed to. Like it's in
Yeah,
the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You're supposed to refuse an illegal order. And as a soldier or sailor, that's up to you to make that determination as an adult.
correct. And um, just the fact that, we, if this kind of, discourse, this kind of weaponizing the government, this kind of seeding distrust in our democracy, in our institutions, in our elections, things that have worked for ages to, keep both political parties in check.
I don't know if a lot of Americans can name the three branches of government, the judicial, executive, and legislative. But I wanted to throw that
Correct.
out there that those are our three branches of government that the checks and balances are theoretically in place for. And
And
when
I
that comes
think a
into
lot of it also has to do with a lot of broad Americans' lack of understanding of how the government works and what each of those roles are, because they think that the president has the ability to just make declarations as if he were a king. And they don't understand how each branch of the government is designed in a way to keep each other in check.
president doesn't have plenary power except for in the case of pardons.
Yep.
And
So
if you don't know
it's
what
an
plenary means, people can Google it. But the
so
last question I had for you was about a specific character because I did read the book and I really liked the book and I got invested and had like parasocial relationships with some of the characters. And one of the characters that really stood out was this guy Elijah Ward. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about like who is Elijah Ward to you?
so this goes into my background and my upbringing. So I don't know if this is how other writers do it, but for the majority of my stories, I took from, I borrowed from everything. I took a person um, that, for example, someone that I know and someone that, maybe talks in a certain way. Just as an example, just growing up, I was a religious Christian. I grew up as an Episcopalian, but then I went to a youth group. And then I became a very religious Christian. I'm no longer a religious Christian or a Christian at all anymore. Not that that's relevant.
So was he based on a specific person from your upbringing or you said an accent?
I have one particular person in mind as the kind of like when as as far as inspiring the character, but he kind of encompasses a multitude of people. So as part of my childhood, when I grew up in like an evangelical upbringing, when I went to like the youth groups and stuff, my home wasn't evangelical. My mom was like raised Roman Catholic. Um, but I started going to places like youth group and Bible camp and Christian concerts like Creation. Um, and I was very much like looking back on it, certain, especially the Bible camp that I went to. Um, it was very like I would say extreme on the indoctrination, um, to the point where like you shouldn't be listening to music that's not Christian. It's of the world, and Christ wants you to go the other direction, and
Lots of
and
shoulds about how to behave.
yes, lots of shame and lots of guilt, and I took some of this extremism and this isolationism to heart, and I used it to kind of inform the background of that character. So I imagine that character being part of those people at Bible camp telling kids that, listen to what I say and don't question it. and that, you shouldn't be listening to music that's not worshiping the Lord, and you everything that comes with that. But it's not just that, because I do strongly believe that a lot of those people, they have good intentions in their hearts. And I think most Christians, I love Christians, and I am
Something that
very,
stood out though. You said not question. So in Elijah Ward's world, is he to not be questioned?
yes, he looks at himself as a fulfillment of prophecy, as divine authority in a collapsing world, almost a Messiah-like figure. Someone
Like
who's,
he has a direct line to good orderly direction and one ought
yeah,
to
like
listen in his
God
mind.
continuously shows his favor. He'll spin everything into his
Did you
direction,
catch that
and
acronym? Good orderly direction, God.
right. I did not catch that, but I also based them off of, like, a lot of the televangelists I found myself watching on TV growing up. Some of them veering towards absurd and comical. I don't envision him as a healer of sorts, but I envision him as a man that's able to sway people with his words. He, riles people up with his enthusiasm and his anger.
So almost an
Um,
antagonist of the story. Would you say that there is a protagonist or like a good guy? Is there a good guy in the book?
So I there sort of is, so like the protagonist definitely I would say is Ethan Cole, the main guy. However, his role in the story is ultimately just a small part, and I try to make the protagonist and antagonist thing be a little bit gray, to kind of mirror real life. My hope is that people reading the book find themselves getting endeared to some of the people on the other side of their political thinking. So, maybe people falling, in love with the character from the terrorist side, or, from the federal side, if they're from the, depending on where they are today with politics.
You
And I
bring up a
don't,
good point. Like communication is maybe what would be helpful. Like if people communicated more rather than gave ultimatums. If you vote for so and so, you can't come to Thanksgiving. Things like that are
or
not
like,
helpful.
just as an example, the current president made a statement at one point about Jews. Um, if they voting Democrat or something like that, they're crazy or disloyal, or, that kind of thing. Like if you have to vote one way or vote this way, or this is the only way, or if you don't believe in our way, you're going to suffer for it,
Oh, like
kind
my
of a
way or the
thing.
highway.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Um,
kind of black and white thinking is not necessarily helpful.
no. And then some of these concepts and the extreme Christianity that I was exposed to growing up. Not all the Christianity I was exposed to growing up was extreme, and I'm still in contact with some of my youth pastors. People that I genuinely believe are truly followers of Jesus. Um, and I have, honest to God, forget what I was just about to say, so I'll let
But I
that
wanted to
stand.
bring up what you said about that gray area. You said something about a gray area, and we can wrap with this because I do have something at the top of the hour. There's this gray area with antagonists and protagonists and with humanity, in that we are not, as humans, either good or bad. Like, no one is all good or all bad or all moral or all immoral. Like, we all have like a mix, right? We all have like this combination of like thoughts that may be useful
Oftentimes
and
we see
unuseful.
ourselves as a hero in our own story, and the truth isn't always so black and white.
And sometimes it's
And
okay to be the villain in somebody else's story. I know I am. So,
yeah.
with that, I'll say thank you for
True.
joining us on Therapy Unlocked, where that's not what this was. This was I Don't Know, because I named my podcast I Don't Know. And then I did a segment with my sister that was called Therapy Unlocked, and that's where my brain just went. So, thank you for joining us on I Don't Know, where I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. And I'm going to stop the recording.